Sugar and Spikes is a science-backed and semi-sarcastic mental health podcast for a new type of business leader. Mental health concerns are occasionally addressed, but this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any condition, mental, physical, metaphysical, or otherwise. That's a job for your doctor or therapist, not a podcast. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's get on with the show.
Back. It's a little gray out today.
It is.
But before we get into the ever important weather section of the podcast,
It's true. I think we have to inform them all the time. It's
Yes.
hot here. It's storming here. Yeah.
welcome to your untimely Midwest weather update.
We need like meteorologist names.
Yes. I'm Sandy Storms. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm Des. I'm a serial content creator and co-host of this fabulous podcast that you are listening to right now.
Yeah, and I'm Tammy. I'm a psychologist and also a co-host of this podcast.
Yes. But okay, so the weather does have a little something to do with today's topic.
Yeah.
But in general, we wanted to talk about this idea of, I don't know, I guess almost like self-awareness. It sounds trite, by like the changing of the seasons and things, and how like one thing that has come up so often recently is, oh my God, can you believe it's almost September and then it's almost fall? And just like this idea that time passes by so fast, and this idea that we get so wrapped up in like the day in, day out stuff to where we may start to get not necessarily burnt out, but like the wheels may start flying off
So like burnt out.
and we don't realize it.
Yeah.
You know, and like those situations can really affect a lot of external things, like can affect your job performance. It can affect how you interact with friends, family, coworkers, things like that. So being aware and having kind of this guidance and you know, stuff like that to manage it all is pretty
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. I think what's interesting though too is like you talk about time going fast.
Mm-hmm.
For me, summer has just dragged on and I'm over it in a big way.
Yeah, and like for me, summer was I just need to get through it. Like how many times throughout summer was I talking to you like I just need to get through travel season?
Yeah, I know.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think it's a really good way to kind of like set those two things beside each other and to say like different things. Like summer means something different to you than it does to me. And what it means to me is different than it would mean to someone else. Right.
Well, and I think that also ties to, you know, not having society kind of project their messages onto you. And if you do hear like, oh, summer's super relaxing and X, Y, and Z and things like that, then there's this added layer of feeling kind of out of the loop of, yeah, that may be it for 90% of the people, but for me, here's what my summer looks like. And that alone can set you up to have this sort of like negative experience, to walk through it with a not so positive view.
Yeah.
Which can therefore affect so many other things.
Yeah. I think that's true. I think it's true when you're like separated or your point of view or your experience kind of doesn't go with like this societal narrative of like, oh, everyone takes vacations in the summer. And I'm like, I don't. It just makes it even harder and you feel like even more alone on that island and like having to push through it by yourself because like even if you don't consciously think about it, you're like, well, no one really gets it. Like they don't like because they're doing this glamorous vacation thing. And like I know you do your vacations like later in the year and anytime the last time I had a vacation, I don't even know. I don't even remember when it was. It's been that long. So like for me, summer is trying to push through to the end to get a break. And for you, it's kind of like, no, don't go, summer. Don't go.
I mean, it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I've had like the crazy travel season. Not as crazy as last year, but still, being away from home for work is hard.
It is hard.
But also like we're on summer hours and the weather's nice and it's just like longer days.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a both and situation. But I think really one thing you mentioned was the idea of like head down and just focusing on.
Yeah.
That can get really dangerous because when you do just put your head down and you focus on, well, everyone else, when there's this assumption that everyone else is having this really great experience, I'm going to push forward and do my own thing and that's it.
Well, you don't want to put that on anyone else and like wreck their good time either, right?
I mean, there are a few things there, right? Like for one, there's this assumption, whereas as we just kind of discussed with my situation, like it's both. Like it's a little nice and a little bit hectic. Like, so you're putting this assumption on their experience. And again, like there's this negative perception where you're getting down on yourself and creation of almost jealousy towards like the rest of society. And then the third thing is when this happens, this is a highly loaded situation.
It is.
The third thing is when you just keep going so hard, so fast, and so isolated, then things start to happen that you don't even realize.
Yeah. Right? Because like this idea, I think very often, we talk about self-awareness and how to know when you're burned out. But I think the times when it's the most not dangerous is in like dangerous, someone's going to die. But I think the hardest place to be is this feeling like you're managing it all and you're doing okay. And you kind of know you need a break, but I got this. I've done this before. Like it's fine. And then something happens. And then all of a sudden, everything you were balancing just comes crashing to the floor. And you're like, kind of stunned, like, how did I get here? I was doing fine yesterday. And that's, I mean, it's a hard place to be.
And I think kind of the danger is it comes from that isolation.
Yeah.
Because, so we've talked about, well, I don't want to put my stuff on other people. So you're already isolating. And then you don't have that connection where someone else can come in and say, hey, it looks like you may need help or something. And I know for like overachievers, a lot of folks that really kind of pride themselves on being able to quote unquote do it all. It becomes this sort of point of pride.
Yeah.
Where, yeah, you're right. I am doing this all. Oh my God, I can't believe how much I'm juggling. I noticed that just personally, like bringing in a personal example this week where I was like, I have my shit on lock. Like, it is great. I can't believe all the things I'm getting done. I'm just knocking tasks out after, and things are growing, and this is amazing. And yes, I have found the way forward. And then Wednesday happened.
Yeah.
And then it reminded me of like those old cartoons with like the Roadrunner.
Oh yeah.
Where he's like running but then slammed into a wall. Like I didn't see this coming at all. It was just like Wednesday night I was done with work and I think I was like starting to stretch or something to work out and I just started like crying and just felt like everything.
Yeah.
And was like I was simultaneously like stressed and mad and
shocked.
Yes, shocked and just everything.
Yeah.
And almost a panic attack. Like there was an intense amount of anxiety.
Yeah.
And I think that like looking back now, one of the warning signs really was in this inflated sense of confidence. Like there's a difference between I can do this through these tools. Like there's a difference between I'm managing and this is great and I'm going to make sure I get what I need versus, oh my God, this is amazing and I have life figured out.
Yeah.
Like there's definitely a difference.
Oh, for sure. And I think sometimes that's really a hard line to walk, especially because like the drift can be so slow that you don't even notice it. Because I had a similar situation to you this week too. Something's in the air, swear.
It's the new moon.
Right?
I'm just gonna go all sorts of woo. It's the new moon.
We love the woo. But I had a similar thing happen, and I kind of caught on to it at the very last second, but not with enough time to actually, like, I was starting to be more aware, and then it was just like, bleh.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like, by the time it was brought to my attention, I didn't even notice it, right? So all these things had kind of been happening, and I just kept thinking, yeah, I'm a little tired, but okay, I just need a good night's sleep. I just need a couple of hours off, and like everything will be fine. And I wasn't getting those things, but I also was still like, I just need that one thing and I'll be okay. And so you kind of, it's so slow that like you just don't even notice it until you're at the bottom of this canyon and you're like, how the hell did I get here? Like, I don't even know.
And I think really depending on the situation, but a lot of times for as fast as it comes on, if you know what you need and give that space, getting back to baseline is pretty accessible.
Oh, sure.
You know, depending on the length of build. Like I know with your example and everything, there's been a bit of a slower build, like to get to the realization and stuff like that. Like maybe months.
Yeah.
I'd assume.
Right? Like I'm thinking back on it now and I'm like, oh, this has been going on a long time.
And taking a bubble bath is not going to help with that.
No.
No.
No, it's not.
Whereas, like with my example, it's funny because I do have like a stupid level of self-awareness because I'm an only child and the world revolves around me. I know that like this past weekend I didn't get my quiet Sunday.
Oh.
Like I put so much into making things, like my life is being like a creator, right?
Yeah.
And interacting with people. I'm also like I'm very much an introvert, and this past weekend I had family in town and hung out with neighbors, and I didn't get my quiet Sunday. Like normally I can do things on Saturday, but Sundays, like phones down, I watch TV, I take like any sort of pressure off.
Yeah.
That didn't happen this week. 3 days later, I lose my shit.
Yeah.
You know, and looking back now, oh, I see.
Yeah.
You know?
It's funny how hindsight's just 2020. Like, that's so crappy. Like, how come you couldn't see this like 2 days ago?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and it's only coming out of it and realizing that Wednesday when I had that moment and just made myself like disconnect, and like I had to do some work around it's okay to have days throughout the week be different. Like there can be a routine and it can be different too if you need it to be.
So flexibility and consistency.
Yeah. So I was playing around with that and just kind of leaned into it on Wednesday. And then it was during this episode when I was thinking about it, I was like, oh yeah, it was because like I didn't get my Sunday.
Yeah.
And I'm spoiled and I need my Sundays. So, you know.
It's like it's like a little temper tantrum all of its own.
Oh my God, my brain was just like, no, my brain is a toddler. I didn't get my nap.
Right.
And you want me to go be nice to that person? No.
I'm now going to have like a breakdown in the store while I'm like laying on the floor screaming.
And I'm like, I just want to go buy these bananas.
Oh my goodness.
But like, so for that situation, a timeout and a timeout.
We're continuing with the toddler theme.
But like that break, or as I mentioned to Tammy, like a bubble bath, like it wasn't a bubble bath, but like that moment helped because it was a brief timeline. That's what I'm getting at. Whereas like if it's longer, then there's kind of this almost call for deeper evaluation and looking into kind of processes and kind of, dare I say, digging into that skills closet for what's maybe gone out of style that you didn't realize was out of style.
Oh, or what do you have in your closet that's coming back in style? I'm sorry. I was looking at like trends for fall.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like plaid. And I'm like, oh yeah.
Oh no. So here's
I have stuff in my closet.
Here's the 2020 spring trends, florals and pastels.
Ooh.
Here's the 2020 fall trends, flannels, and winter trends are going to be velvet and jewel tones.
Oh,
like
groundbreaking.
Shocker.
Right? I just thought it was funny. Like I was reading it and I'm like, plaid.
Yeah.
I'm like, I didn't get rid of all my plaid. Like, here it comes, you know, and you're like, oh, I can refresh it and use it again. But I know that wasn't the point you were making, but I just thought that was funny. But yes.
Like looking in your skull closet, maybe like what doesn't fit so much anymore, what's not working, what is left over from this person that was and now isn't anymore. I know you and I kind of talked about that.
Yeah. I mean, so the idea of the bubble bath, I think, is really important. Because that's not to say bubble baths aren't necessary for the people who like them.
Oh no, I took like a bubble bath on Tuesday before I had my meltdown.
And
for one, it didn't work. Two, it was quite lovely, but it was like a scheduled, like, this is my defined. So anyways, I'm going off on a tangent. But bubble baths can be nice if you do them in a way that works for you.
So I hate them. And I don't.
Okay, so I used to until Tuesday, because I shifted my mindset around them.
Okay.
And with what I was expecting them to be.
What did you expect them to be?
So I used to always think that they were like this magical moment to just like sit and relax for like 40 minutes or whatever. You know, the way that people are just like, I'm just going to hang out and do these things. It wasn't a bubble bath. There were like bath bombs. Anyways. I did one with Epsom salts.
Okay.
Because my muscles hurt. So, and that was the thing. It was self-care in that my muscles hurt. So I'm doing this to feel better. I think this was the thing. I was doing it to have my muscles feel better so I could work out more on Wednesday. And then when like everything still hurt on Wednesday, I was like, I am done. I tried. We're done.
Go away.
Yep.
Well, I think that's interesting because you're kind of talking about kind of small activities that help you maintain in the short term. A bubble bath isn't going to fix a big crash. No. And I will tell you, I hate bubble baths. Why? They're fucking boring. Like, I'm sitting here in water. Like, I don't find it relaxing. I find it none of those things.
Well, and I think that's where like my shift was it was serving a purpose with like the Epsom salts and really to like help my muscles feel better.
Yeah.
I also may or may not have had my iPad propped up with some Real Housewives on and some kombucha in a wine glass. Like it was a thing.
I just can't even get into it enough to even try that stuff. Like my partner, he loves them. He takes them 3 to 4 times a week. And I'm like, I don't understand what's going on right now, but you do you.
You know what else I did?
What?
On Monday night, I looked up the research behind why baths are beneficial.
Why?
There's like a lot of research around how it calms like your CNS and everything. And so I had some it took me a day to science it up. And then I like tried it out on Tuesday and then was pissed off by Wednesday. So clearly.
I mean, so the little low maintenance things we do for ourselves, obviously for me, it's not taking a bath.
Yeah.
I think are important. But I think sometimes what happens is, and this is what happened to me, like you put your head down, you're just trying to get through to this end that really is more nebulous than you think because actually there's no end. There's no end, but you're thinking I just have to get through this. But if you were to finish that thought, it would be through and to what?
Yeah.
Like,
to what end?
Like, where is that going? And I would have been like, oh, like nowhere. It's the same.
Which is something we've been talking about, whereas like there's always something else.
Right. And so milestones that you hit are like long gone by the time you knew you hit them. So anyway, I wasn't doing a lot of those self-care things. And so like sometimes the week would come on Monday and I'd be like, man, I just don't want to get out of bed. And I just think, you know what? You're just having a bad day. Like, just get up. Let's go to it. And that was happening for a long time. And my idea was, I don't even think I was trying to actively ignore it, but I actually was just trying to hold everything in kind of this stasis, not going up or down, but just balancing.
Things were bubbling and you tried to put the lid on instead of turning off the flame.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't even try and turn the heat down a little. And not only that, I turned the heat up a lot because I was working extra hours, and it was things I had to do.
Why isn't this lid working?
I know. Like, I don't understand. And then like, boom, like everything just kind of exploded in my face. Like not in any like tangible
epic way.
No, like I wasn't. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. But for me, it felt like, to me, like, like first level. Like for me, it was just, oh my God, what just happened? I don't know. And like, I didn't have the energy to try to figure it out.
Right.
You know? So, but with people who are high achieving and who have been through incredibly pressurized situations for a long time, and that's a lot of us.
Yeah.
Right?
Most.
And you've been through it and you managed to get through it somehow. I think that can set up this kind of false idea in your mind that you can always just make it to the end and then do what you have to do because you've done it before, right? And this ties back to the skills closet. You've done it before. It was
You've worn it before.
You've worn it before. It really worked. It looked amazing. And then now you keep trying to wear it again and again and again. And it's like, your best friend says, you really need to not wear that anymore. So I think that there is a danger in that when you are high achieving and you can handle a lot of stress and you're used to a lot being demanded of you, that you think, yeah, I can do that. I've done that a million times. But I think the danger in that is not every situation that you've been in that was filled with pressure and stress is the same. And so we think it's the same situation, whereas like in the big picture, maybe it is, but in the minutia, kind of like the details, it is not.
Yeah.
And so what felt appropriate actually wasn't.
Yeah. So, I mean, how can folks kind of navigate like checking into their skills closet and stuff? Like, I have a couple thoughts, but I'm interested
You're
in
tossing it at me first.
Yeah.
So I think it depends on where you're at. If you have been having like a bunch of like, I don't want to get out of bed mornings, maybe think about how you need to end the day before. But also recognize that you may be further on down the road than you ever thought. And you can try what you can try as soon as you right? You know what I mean? Like once it's brought to your attention, however that happens, somebody tells you or something like the light bulb comes on somehow and you're like, okay, I have to do something about this. And maybe those things don't work, but they may have worked, just not preventing, like it almost prevented not the accident, but how severe it was. And so I always go back to like being gentle with ourselves because nobody is harder on themselves than themselves. And so not to frame it up as like, well, I just totally failed at that. Like maybe you didn't, because you can turn it into something that you learned. And learning is not always comfortable. It's not always kind.
It's rarely comfortable or like fun.
Yeah.
Like schools lie. Learning is not fun.
I know. No, it's not. And I'm reminded of that every once in a while. Like a person who only has one strategy, like they are kind of in for not good things. And so the things that teach you flexibility and problem solving are the things that hurt the most.
Yeah.
You know, but they end up being valuable experiences in the end, but they also suck. So like both those things are true.
Yeah.
And so trying to be gentle with yourself. And by the time you did catch it, okay, what can I do to try and like help myself? Maybe not entirely, but like turn down the heat a little bit if we're going with the lid on the pot. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
So helpful, not helpful.
Well, I think your mention of like the one way, and this goes back to kind of like the head down, keeping forward, like pushing everything going. It makes me think of like if you have this one pair of pants or like the one jacket that you wear day in and day out and day in and day out. And for one, things are going to start to get smelly. I don't care how much Febreze you use.
Right.
Like if that is the one thing you have, and then it's also, it will get worn out.
Yeah.
If it's from Forever 21, maybe next week. If it's like a good investment piece, 6 months from now or something, but you're going to start seeing those holes.
Yeah, that wear and tear.
Yeah. So if your self-care quote unquote strategy or, your management style of everything is the same thing.
Yeah, head down and go.
Day in, day out, you will see those holes.
That's interesting that you say that. I'm just going to stop you really quick because I just realized as you were talking that I pride myself on being flexible and having good problem-solving strategies, but actually putting your head down and trying to get through it is a singular strategy.
Yeah, every time I've suggested something to you for have you tried this, it gets met with a that doesn't work. Or I don't do that.
I don't do that.
Yeah.
Man, you're just fucking throwing me under the bus in here. Yeah, so like
I say it with love.
Oh, sure.
Well, sure. And because I think
it's true. It's true.
I think it's important to no one has this together.
Oh, no.
You've also thrown me under the bus many times. But I mean, this goes to what you were talking about earlier, where having an outside perspective and being having space for that is also key. Like if your friend's like, hey, that shirt's small. I don't care if it's your favorite shirt. Maybe it's not appropriate to wear to work.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes putting your head down and trying to get through it doesn't feel like a singular strategy.
Because each day has something new.
Exactly. Yeah. So
no, I'm super flexible.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's that dialectic of it's a singular strategy and it's also different strategy. And so, so it ends up being the one thing you use when things get really hard. And sometimes it's just not the right thing, So that's really interesting to me.
Well, I think about
an aha moment now.
Yeah. I think about it in terms of working out, whereas I could say I work out 5 or 6 days a week, which could be singular, but also I make sure, or at least I try to, and I definitely almost always fall into this trap of getting hooked on one specific style.
Oh, yeah.
So I try to keep it diversified, where Monday's long and hard, and it's the worst day of the week workout wise for me, so then it's just done.
Oh, yeah.
And then Tuesday's short and sweet and things like that, but then if I even if I try to have that system of a different style on each day, after about 10 days, then I'm I just want to do this one thing. Either I just want to keep it short because I'm sick of dedicating all this time, or I just want to keep it kind of easy in terms of bar and stuff because I'm sick of throwing weights right now.
Yeah.
And then it just turns into this other type of singular style. So I think even for diversified things, we crave habit.
Oh, sure.
We crave this is the one thing I know.
Well, so and I can do it on automatic.
Exactly. So it's this constant battle, and that's one thing with professional growth, personal growth. It really is holding yourself to a higher level that no one else is asking of you except yourself.
Right. Well, and also just a little bit of self-disclosure. I remember you saying to me last week, maybe, I don't know what day it's real. But whatever day you said this to me, you were you have not really done a good job of burnout prevention or even taking that seriously. And I was oh, yeah, you're right. I hadn't. I thought of burnout and I'm that doesn't really happen to me. I'm okay. I'll be fine. And it isn't I was actively ignoring it or even actively going ha 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 ha, I don't do that. It was just more I'm not going to get burned out because I know before I get there, I will know what to do. And so I was not taking it seriously because I thought I could manage it.
Well, I also think that there's this point of it can be very difficult to know if/when burnout is coming because we're constantly facing different kind of lifestyle situations.
Yeah.
Like you and I were talking about this where, yeah, you've been in extremely stressful and trying situations before and managed it, but your life hasn't had the unique complexities that it has right now. So how would you know?
Right.
You know, so I think taking that step back and saying, even if I think I know, okay, then what would that, you know, like going that extra step beyond, oh, I know, you
Yeah.
know?
And I think what also makes that hard is sometimes doing self-care when you're in a situation like that just feels like one more fucking thing on your plate that you have to do.
The bubble bath example.
Right. Like, I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm not. I
Yeah.
just won't.
I don't have time.
I don't have time. It's not helpful. I don't even like that anyway, blah, 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 blah. But like, it's not because we want ourselves to get burned out. It's just like, it's really hard to have that level of self-awareness, especially when like so many things in your life are calling for attention. How much attention do you really have left to be like, I think I'm headed towards a burnout. I think maybe I should do this. Because you're not thinking that. You're just like, oh my God, I just want to go to bed. Like, I just have to do that. Like, I'm done.
Yeah.
And so it's really, really hard. And so, like, it's easy, I think, sometimes to reflect and be like, oh, yeah, I saw that coming. Like, I don't know why I didn't see it. But it's just, you only have so many fucks to give. You only have so much attention that can be put on so many things. And so it really does help to have somebody in your life who can be like, okay, hold on a second. This is all I'm going to say. And then take what you will. And this is what it is. And you did that with me last week. And I was like, fuck, yeah, you're right. No, you're right. Like, I wasn't even like defensive about it. I was like, oh, shit. Yeah, you're right. But by that time, it was just like a little too late, right? But who knows if you hadn't even said that, where I would be now compared to where I am now. Does that make sense? Like, if you hadn't said those things, I would have still thought like, I got this. And I was really starting to think through the weekend, like, maybe I don't have this. Like, maybe I need to think about doing something else. But before I could really implement those strategies, it was just like, fuck.
Yeah.
You know? So.
Well, and I think like that self-awareness, it's hard for people to have, it's hard for some to have that external source. And I think, you know, I'm personally such a big fan of like those 90-second moments of like internal dialogue. Again, only child. I only had myself growing up. Where it's like, okay, where am I today? How am I feeling? Also, I worked like inpatient for almost 10 years. Like having those like daily check-ins with clients and telling them, did you do that? Or like asking, have you done it yet? Like it wears and grows on you at the same time. But having those internal check-ins of how am I, scale of 1 to 10, and just knowing that can be so beneficial because it's like, I'm at a 3. I'm exhausted and stuff. Do I have time to think about why? No, but I know that walking through the rest of the day, I'm probably going to be a little bitchy. You know? And then like even just doing like number tracking in a bullet journal or something like that to say, oh, today, like for the past week, it's all been 3s. Maybe something else needs to happen. You know, something like just some sort of way to visualize and bring that awareness to yourself. I think there are ways to get creative around that if you don't have like a therapist or that person or insert other brilliant individual here.
Brilliant mind here.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the reason that therapists don't do therapy with friends and loved ones is because one of the things that drives therapy and makes it work is the therapist is outside the situation and can take that broader view. Whereas when you're in it, it's almost impossible. And so having somebody external, like a therapist, life coach, friend, whoever, they're going to be able to see things you can't see. And so that's where it becomes really valuable. But also we think, and I know I do this, so like I'm calling myself out too, I don't have time to check in with myself. That's not true.
Mhm.
I could have done that in my 10-minute drive to work,
Mhm.
you know? So when we start to feel like we don't have time, because
Mhm.
it legitimately feels like you don't,
Mhm.
it becomes a way to challenge yourself to be like, that's not really the case.
Mhm.
And where could I do it?
Mhm.
Even if I could only do it once, where can I?
Yeah.
And trying to find that one place where you can fit it in. I
Mhm.
remember like sometimes when I teach, so I teach skills, right?
Mhm.
And I teach a skill that's about when you feel really like emotionally like high.
Mhm.
Like I can't even talk today. But when you're really high, when
Like
you
elevated or okay.
no. So like when you're feeling super emotional, but in terms of like negative emotions, so
Mhm.
like you're feeling triggered or whatever,
Mhm.
you can actually take a minute, not even, and it doesn't even take a minute, but here's the interesting thing. You can take a deep breath
Mhm.
and check in with yourself,
Mhm.
and then take a deep breath and kind of do the same thing with the outside.
Mhm.
And it feels like you don't have time for that, and
Mhm.
it takes less than 15
Yeah.
seconds.
And it
So,
can be so helpful.
right? But it really does feel like you
Mhm.
don't have time. But when you do it, you're like, oh, so like our brain kind of lies to us a little
Mhm.
bit
Because it
because,
gets caught up in like so many other things.
well,
It gets caught in the cycle of I have this and this is going on and it's just like it's on repeat. Like it is like
yeah,
a cassette tape on loop.
yeah. But also, I was explaining this to my daughter yesterday. I said, listen, our brain tells us things,
Mhm.
but our brain, the human brain, is designed to be fast
Mhm.
and not accurate.
Fast and lazy.
Right?
Mhm.
Like it's designed for speed. And so in order to do that, evolution has kind of said, well, maybe accuracy isn't quite as
Mhm.
important. And so it sometimes your brain tells you something, but it's leaving out this whole other piece.
Mhm.
Or it's telling you something that if you just took a deep breath and checked again,
Mhm.
you would find that it wasn't the case,
Mhm.
right? Um like you think you see somebody like and you get kind of like and then you
Mhm.
realize it's not that person.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by like it's made to be fast, not accurate.
Mhm.
And so sometimes even it'll tell you like you don't have time.
Mhm.
Well, yes, I do. I may
Mhm.
not have an hour, but I certainly
Mhm.
have 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And then doing that, like the check in, like the deep breath check in, the deep breath
Mhm.
check out, um, is your way of like challenging your own assumptions and like
Mhm.
challenging what your brain is telling to you, like an experiment
Mhm.
um, of is that really true? So, kind
Mhm.
of doing some empirical testing.
Mhm.
And usually it's pretty interesting the results you find because you're like,
Mhm.
oh, yeah, I did have time to do that.
Yeah. And I think even with that, if you have to do it 5 or 6 times throughout the day, that's what, a minute and a half of your time?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so that's something that you can easily go back to when the loop starts coming up again,
Right.
and you're not losing time.
Right.
And I think, like, this whole thing on time, makes me think of, and I know a lot of different various, like, circles kind of use this. I've heard it for meditation, I've heard it for, like, AA meetings and stuff, but the I don't have time to, like, I don't have time to meditate, I don't have time to go to a meeting, I don't have time to work out is the time you need it.
Yeah.
Like, especially I think for, like, those quicker things like the meditation and stuff, like, I don't have time to meditate, like,
You don't,
yeah.
it's not a priority.
Mhm.
So, one way that I teach to challenge is
Mhm.
when you say I don't have enough time, what you're
Mhm.
really saying is that is not a priority for you.
Mhm.
So if you don't have enough time to check in with yourself,
Mhm.
it's just not a priority for you right now.
Yeah.
And when you frame it up that way, it kind of sounds in a way you didn't really mean it.
Yeah.
Like I don't ever mean to say like I'm not important or
Mhm.
I don't want to be emotionally healthy or I don't like I'm not meaning to say those things,
Mhm.
but sometimes just rewording them from a different perspective, you're like, "Oh,"
Yeah.
you know? And
Mhm.
so then it kind of unlocks and kind of gets your thinking kind of going again.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think the other thing is just kind of to round it out and to carry on this skills closet piece is, you know, it when you're going through this evaluation, when you're realizing things maybe weren't working the way that they used to, they weren't fitting the way that they used to, things like that. As you're getting rid of stuff, I would suggest there being time and allowing space to consider what else you're bringing in.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, if you think about it in terms of shopping, like, for the most part, you don't just go buy the first couple of shirts that you see. Like, it's, well, what purpose did that top serve? It was a nice work top, it was easily packable, things like that. What did that skill that I am no longer kind of pulling out, what was that? Was that my, like, freebie Sunday, or was that, a quick mindfulness thing that I did for 10 seconds?
Right.
Okay, so I'm looking to replace this.
So
I need
was it-
something fast. I need
Mhm.
something that's more long term, and sometimes, like, and this is the thing, and I think this is one thing that I want to kind of make clear throughout this episode, is having this be a regular kind of check-in, so you're not
Mhm.
doing this type of inward searching and internal thinking during a time of burnout or crisis. So you have the space to be like, well, what did that serve?
Yeah.
What else would work? Things like that.
And the thing is I was thinking, and you can tell me if you think this is accurate, like a bubble bath is like an accessory.
Mm-hmm.
They're accessories. So
Exactly.
there are skills that are accessories.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are like, these are my basic wardrobe staples.
Mm-hmm.
So like, it's all great if you have a great necklace,
Mhm.
but that isn't necessarily going to make or break you.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be those core things that you lean on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if you have a key piece of your wardrobe, like let's say you have a capsule wardrobe and
Mhm.
like they have a key part of it that doesn't fit,
Mm-hmm.
then you've kind of lost all the workability that's
Mhm.
there in what
Yeah.
you've chosen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, playing through with this idea, like, foundational skills and stuff are foundations. Like, if you think like foundation pieces for a wardrobe, like even like underwear and bras and things like that, they're where you build your outfit from, kind of.
Mhm.
They also wear out, and some of the things that, like, you need to have on, like, heavy rotation and be paying attention to.
Yeah.
Same thing with skills, like your foundational skills, if they start to wear out, if the elastic starts to go in that bra band, like, you're gonna get back pain. Like,
It's true.
like,
Yeah.
you're going to get other forms of discomfort.
That weren't intended.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. That's
No, I
kind
like
of to
that.
round it out.
Yeah. I mean, I really like this idea because I think it provides that additional perspective that's
Mhm.
outside of you enough that
Mhm.
you can look at it
Yeah.
and be like, oh, yeah. So, kind of like when you're teaching about culture,
Mhm.
you have to put it in this other example of
Mhm.
like something not even related. So you can be like,
Mhm.
oh, that's how that concept works. Because
Yeah.
we all swim in our own cultures that we're taught.
Mhm.
And so sometimes it can be hard to step outside of that. And so you
Mhm.
have to have this totally other thing, like with animals or plants or like
Mhm.
something like that.
Yeah.
So it's the same kind of idea. So putting this in the idea of a closet
Mhm.
and building that with good foundational pieces that don't like dig into your shoulders or
Mhm.
like, you know what I mean? And then like building from there.
Mhm.
And if your core foundational piece is, I can just do this because I've done it before,
Mhm.
you probably need to revisit that.
Mhm.
And I can say that because that's been mine for a really long time.
Yeah.
And so now I'm here in a position saying, I really need to reevaluate that. So,
Mhm.
um, we're fallible. We are all, and this just goes back to
Mhm.
like my core belief is that people are doing the best they can.
Mhm.
And there are ways that they can do better.
Yeah.
And that doesn't take away from the fact that you are doing the best you can, trying as much as you can. And I totally respect that.
Mhm.
So it helps you come from a place of compassion.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
That's a great note to end on.
Mhm.
All right. Well, we will talk to everyone next week with another insightful skills closet perspective
Yep.
in some shape or form. Because we're doing the best we can.
And maybe we need to do better.
Yeah.
Bye, friends.
Bye.